واذكر الأيام يا حلو الهوى في حنايا الغاب عند الجدوى حين كنا والهوى حلو الغوى نتشاكى
معلمة كامروع
ضمنا الليل على بوح طوى كل ما في قلبنا من غزل فأنا إن أشتكي مر النوى لا تلمني يا حبيبي أنت لي
اذكريني كلما الفجر بدا واذكري الأيام ليل السهر
قد ما عم نعلى بالأصوات وبالصريخ وبالضجة صار الشيء البسيط، الصرخة الصغيرة ما بقى لها طعمة.
صوت بيروت مثل المكنة اللي مخربة، ما فيها نفس أصوات بيروت.
بكل الأعياد تطلع أصوات الاحتفالية والألعاب. حقيقة مدينة مجنونة، مدينة مش بقاموسها الصمت، لم يدخل الصمت بقاموسها ولا بطقسها ولا بحياتها. رغم كل مجموعة الأصوات المزعجة والجميلة بيبقى صوت الحياة فيها هو الغالب.
لا، الفرقة شيء كتير، برأيي شيء كتير عنيف، خاصة أنه ما بتعرف شو عم بفرقوا. إنه في يكون عرس، في يكون خطاب سياسي، في يكون موت حدا، في يكون احتفال.
أصلاً بوقت الحرب كنا كل الوقت نتحذر إذا فرقاع ولا رصاص، وبعد معقولة.
بلاقي الصمت بعيون الناس أحياناً، وخاصة لما بتكون المدينة غارقة باضطرابات سياسية وبقلق نفسي وبقلق اجتماعي، ما عم تقدر تحكي، ما عم تقول احتجاجها.
أصوات المدينة ما بتزعجني، بالعكس وقت ما بيكون في أصوات للمدينة بخاف. الصمت اللي بيخاف الواحد إنه الصمت يصير عطول عطول. معروف إنه يوم الأحد بنحس إنه المدينة مرتاحة، نايمة، مش ساكتة، نايمة شوي، وهالشي حلو. هالشي حلو لأنه بنصير نحس بأنه المدينة ملكنا.
On Saturdays and Sundays you have weddings.
There are parts of Beirut that has beautiful architecture, a lot of history, a lot of aesthetic. Yeah, it does clash with the buildings that were built throughout the war with no licenses and no permits that have added a sense of ugliness to the overall architecture. But yet you see some old beautiful homes that are just gorgeous that you can just sit and watch.
ناس بأي مدينة بالعالم بيشبهوا مدينتهم. العمارة بتشبه الناس والناس بيشبهوا العمارة. بيروت تغرق أكثر وأكثر بالكثافة العمرانية وبالبناء التجاري.
They have rebuilt Beirut, but before there was a lot of buildings that were shot down and scarred from the war. It used to shock me, and now I've become immune to it.
I've seen lots of those. I've lived with scarred buildings. They carry their own memories, you know. These buildings, they definitely carry their own memories. And you feel them tired. I don't know if they're bleeding. Maybe they're bleeding, but we just don't see the blood. If blood doesn't show and tears do not show on the building, it carries them in one way or another. Beirut has always gone through rebirth. It's like a phoenix. It just, everything is destroyed and suddenly, little by little, it just comes back.
I don't know, I guess my relationship to them is different because I wasn't here for the war. I grew up right after it was over, and those were, I guess, a monument for something that my parents had to go through. So it's a bit of a monolithic event in my head.
I'm not a fetishist of scars. I think scarring is part of life, but it's important to recognize the scarring process and not to put things under the carpet.
المباني اللي بعد ما ترممت من الحرب عزيزة على قلبي، لأنه هي مثل الصور العائلية القديمة اللي صارت ممحي لونها شوي وصفر الورق، فبتحكينا ورح تختفي قريبا، مثل ما وجه بيروت بيروت اللي ماتت عم بيختفي. بيروت الجديدة هي بيروت ما كتير بتعاطى مع بعض.
I'm part of a culture, and I like to define myself as an architect of the present. Someone who belongs to his generation, to his time. This is my playground. This is one of my favorite buildings in Beirut. It's the work of my father. This was designed in the early 70s. I was born in Beirut in 1968, spent the first 7 years of my childhood in Beirut, in what was called the western sectors of the city. We were displaced many times, particularly in the early years of the war. BO18 is a result or is a reaction to a set of circumstances that I couldn't but recognize. It's an area that lived the trauma and still didn't really got out of this. In 1948, became a camp for Palestinian refugees, and that was until 1976. At that point, the camps were basically razed by a very short battle. What touches me most about this project is walking out of this club at 5 in the morning and seeing life coming out of that hole. It starts breathing and emitting sounds and lights, and then it recedes back into the ground as the sun comes up and goes back to sleep during the day. Early commissions were mostly fiascos. I went through 16 contractual engagements that died on paper. I was known as the paper architect.
My professional career is my day-to-day life. It's not a career. I think that's why it's so exhausting. It's not, you don't go to work and then go home and there's no disconnect. I was born into a home of art. My father, being a choreographer, founded the company back in 1968, and he started with 10 dancers maybe. And then it started to grow and grow where it became an identity of Lebanon. And the company grew from 10 people, we are now at 100. And I think I was like Alice in Wonderland. I fell in love with this world of the theater. So I started to work with the company, and bit by bit, I somehow seemed to have been given all the responsibilities of choreography, of creating. It was very helpful because I had the technique and the knowledge of the West, the theory. Yet I was born into this heritage and this tradition. My father started a Middle Eastern folkloric Lebanese company. The language of folklore comes from heritage, comes from tradition, comes from the villages, comes from the identity of the people. If you're going to theatricalize that, you can to a certain extent. But to develop it into a larger art form that can vastly grow and speak a universal language and touch any country, you have to put some fundamental grounds to it. And that's why you mix a modern classical technique with the folklore, because you allow the body to have a much extensive, larger language, yet maintaining a certain style. The body is a very precious tool, and it can be so expressive. And I think the body is able to speak a language that's universal.
حاولت أنه أعبر عن جسد المرأة بلغة المرأة وليس بلغة الرجل. أنا أريد أن أعبر عن جسدي، أريد أن أعبر عن أحاسيسي. فأنت لما بتملكي جسمك بتبلشي تملكي حياتك. الجسد هو وجود، هو حياة، هو الأنا. لا يمكن الكتابة هي فعل حر، لا يمكن الكتابة تتم بمعزل عن الحرية. يعني أنا نشأت بعائلة كتير كبيرة، يلي هي 7 بنات و3 صبيان. والدتي أمية وأبي أمي، ما كانوا يعني بالكاد يعرفوا يقروا أو يكتبوا. أنا بتذكر أنه يعني نقمة، كان هناك نقمة عند والدتي أنها هي كانت أمية. نحن ما نعرف أنه هي ما بتفهم اللي عم نقرأ، بس هي كانت تمثل انه عم تفهم علينا لتسمع لنا الدرس. فتخيلي ملا ام عظيمه هي تمسك الدفتر وتقلنا سمعوا الدرس، نصير نسمع، تعرف من تعابير وشنا اذا غلطنا ولا لا، بذكاء الفطري. ما بدأ لعبا صار حبا، أصبح لقاؤه كل يوم أحد عطشا وجوعا. تملك كل فراغات جسدي وفراغات المدينة حولي، ليتحول العالم في عيني إلى أسرار دافئة. أحس معه أنني امرأة ولست ظلا لحائط جسدي، ظل يتداخل بكتلة جسده لتتبدد وحشتي في وحدة ظلي. كنت أعرف حدود ظلي في حياته، وكانت هذه الحدود تغريني، إذ إن كل ما كنت أريده هو راجل ولا ظل حيطة، كما تقول النساء في الأفلام العربية.
مضى الزمن يا امير اللي بعد فكرة وعصام.
بالصحافة نتصل أكثر من أي وقت باللغة اليومية، بلغة الحياة اليومية، باللغة المباشرة، بلغة الشارع، بلغة الاستعمال اليومي. هنا حيث ضيعت شعوب البئر وتاهت أخرى خلف الطيور، نبشنا أحلاما وبطاطا وقطفنا أسماكا حية، أكلنا أسرارا كثيرة وعددا أكبر من الينابيع، وقبل أن ينشق منا ذلك الهرم لا نبالي بالأرض التي طارت من أعيننا. كان عم واحد يقول انه احلامه بطاطا، انه البطاطا جنب الاحلام. بتصير البطاطا هي شيء كتير مادي، كتير صلب، كتير ملموس، بتصير جزء من احلامنا. يعني القصيدة عم تقول انه الاحلام مش بس يعني بالراس، ان الواقع نفسه، الواقع البسيط فينا نحلم فيه، في فوت بأحلام.
الاشياء اللي كانت يجيبها البحر على الشط من لعب، من اشياء مرمية يعني، جمعها تعمل فيها اشكال، وهي الاشكال هيدي اللي خلتني صير بحلم بشيء اسمه فن. ما في حدود باللوحة عندي. بحب الحياة، طالما بحب الحياة يعني الفن منه بعيد عنه أبدا. مثل ما فتش على اشياء حلوة فوق الماي، كنت فتش على اشياء حلوة تحت الماي كمان. يحكيني بالألوان تبعه، يحكيني بالحركة الماي. بتعرف تلبس الضوء الطبيعة، بتعرف تتعاطى معك بتخلي حسك يقوى. تعذبت أول شي لأن الناس ما فهمتني، بيقولوا هيدا شو عم يعمل، عم يضيع وقت. بس كنت اتعذب تجيب الالوان، تجيب الاشياء هيدي، ما يكون معي مصاري لان احنا عائله كبيره، وما وصلت بالهين يعني. اشتغلت كتير اشياء تجمع مشان الوان، كنت اشتغل شغيل عادي يعني بالبطون، بالعمار، بالكنس. كان عندي استمراريه على طول. يعني الواحد بالفن بلبنان بده يتعب كتير على حاله بالأول، وبس لابد ما يلاقي طريق يعني بالآخر. بكرة منشوف، هيدي الجملة بتعطينا أمل إنه في بكرة عندي، وبكرة عندي يعني لازم أحضر حالي لبكرة. بدي اكتفاء ذاتي من جوا، يعني بدي سلام جواتي أنا، جوات قلبي. وشفت بس صار جوات قلبي السلام، بلشت أعطي أحلى كتير بشغلي.
grew up the first 3 years of my life in Africa. Then I took the plane by myself at 3 years old and came to Beirut. And I grew up in Lebanon and never traveled until university time. I got a scholarship to go to Japan. I did my master's in architecture there, and then I did my PhD in architecture there. I was lucky to have very strong professors like Hara Hiroshi, Fumihiko Maki, Tadao Ando, and many others who were very helpful. And that's where I met Kaya, my wife, who also was born in Africa, in Zimbabwe. Then I came here and we built up a family, having mixed kids from a combination of different cultures.
Can you close the fenêtre?
Why?
Je veux faire un feu.
Un feu?
I think architecture for me is an experimental work in the creation of times and spaces.
We know we come from different places. Either way, we don't really come from different places with antagonisms towards other places. The little sectarian stuff was never there amongst us anyway, or with other people. Like, we're just not like that. I mean, that's what's cool about music, is that it just feels like something that's a bit more universal. Plays a lot of Armenian, like Balkan-influenced violin lines, and I really get into like Beirut vernacular with the way I write. I research that. I research Beirut proverbs. I like these things. A lot of the songs deal with themes related to political instability in the country, which gets really frustrating, sexuality, social hypocrisy, which I guess no one is really completely exempt from. I'm pretty passionate about this place. I don't think I'd produce as violently if I wasn't this passionate about Beirut.
بلش زقاق بال2005. آمن كلنا إنه المسرح هو مكان للشغل الجماعي، إنه زقاق مش شغل واحد بيعمله، زقاق مشروع حياة له علاقة كيف ممكن نعيش المسرح كخيار. بلش بحرب 2006، كان بعده زقاق مبلش، فبلش مش بصبو لتدخل اجتماعي بس بلش بحاجة لإلنا لأنه نفعل بوقت البلد مشلول. واحد من أول المشاريع اللي عملناهم بزقاق واللي كتير عزيزين على قلبي كان بحرب البداوة بال2007. اشتغلنا مع 50 ولد على مسرحية موسيقية هن اقترحوها، لها علاقة بكمية أغاني انكتبت بوقت الحرب. فهذا من أجمل المشاريع اللي عاملينه. ما فينا نعمر نركب لأنه هذا الشيء رح يرجع يتخرب، فبنعمر بمنحى كتير مختلف، بنعمر بالمكان والوقت اللي نحن بقلبه. نحكي عن بعدين بس البعدين له علاقة بالهلأ. إذا بفكر إنه بكرة أفضل، اليوم ما بدي إياه بكبه، ضل ناطرة هيدا البكرة، بس اليوم هو يلي عندي إياه. إذا بكب اليوم وبكب امبارح وبكب كل 30 سنة اللي قطعت فيهم، بكونوا راحوا علي. منيح اللي ما كبيتهم أنا وناطرة بكرة الأفضل، كانوا حلوين يعني.
What makes a city, what makes a building is the life of the people that live in it. Bien et toi? نحن بالأكتر. Très bien, thank you. Tu veux que je te passe le numéro du bureau? Tu peux leur demander parce qu'ils ont des archives de tout. My first big project was the Sky Bar. My first question was, how can I put music into form? Lebanese people are party animals, and I can promise you, you can do a party in a parking lot and it would be as successful as a party in the Sky Bar, yes. This is what I always tell everyone, that I don't know if design brought something, but now obviously it did, because many people who know about design and who feel design come back to me and tell me, no, there's something more. There's this energy, those dynamic lines, that kind of rhythm that translates, and the intensity of the music. Those angles build up in you a strong feeling and emotion that just wants to go out of your body.
لبيروت مدينة بلا ذاكرة، يعني مش مبين بس هذا بأنه شوارعها ما بتحمل أسماء، بس مبين أكتر برغبتها العميقة هالمدينة بنسيان ماضيها.
نحاول انه الفن خليه هو حوار تنقدر ننسى شو عم بيصير حول منا.
Living in Lebanon was not easy. I definitely didn't have a traditional childhood where kids go out at 12, 13, they start going to the movies with other friends or they go to a playground. Like we were always in the house. I developed this passion for animals and pets. And I ended up having a farm in our house, in our country house. I had 25 goats, I had like 100 chicken and 100 pigeons, I had 20 cats, I had 15 dogs. It was very intense because I'm an intense person, so I do things the way I said, I do them fully. So yes, when I say 25 goats, I mean 25 goats, and each one had a name, and I used to take them and dress like a shepherd and take them in the fields to eat and wake up at 5 in the morning and milk them and take the milk, and I learned how to do cheese. I used to do cheese. I used to feed all the animals. So I lived it totally.
قبل الحرب كان في شعراء يتغزلوا بلبنان يقولوا ان لبنان جنة الدنيا. وقت صارت الحرب هالحكي ده ما عادش له محل. الشعر رجع يحكي عن شغلات صغيرة تماما، يحكي عن الجو اللي هو جو الأوضة. زمان صار لحظة بس المكان صار مكان ضيق جدا، مكان ما بيزيد عن أوضة النوم، ما بيزيد عن المطبخ، ما بيزيد عن الحمام. صرنا محبوسين بالأمكنة، ونحن محبوسين بالزمان، محبوسين بالمكان. حتى البحر نفسه صار محل مسكر.
بتذكر احنا لما كنا صغار وكان يصير في حرب، نحن كنا ننبسط انه هي ما في مدرسة. بس هلا لما صار في اولاد بتفكري بالحرب، اول شغلة بفكر فيها كيف بدي لم مثلا اذا هلا بعدها البيبي صغيرة، بس بكره بس يصيروا بالمدرسة اذا صار في رصاصة كيف بدي اركض لمهم، كيف بدي جوزي يوصل على البيت، كيف بدي وين بدك تروحي. عن جد لما بيصير في اولاد شيء غريب الشكل، يعني بتصيري بتخافي عليهم أكتر من عيونك.
She'll turn 3 months tomorrow.
Happy 3 months birthday!
Wait, she's trying to tell me something. Show your mama.
هيك واشجار واشجار اسوي
ليك اسمه لبنان
بس انه كيف انه بيعمل ختيار.
ليش سموك لبنان؟
ختيار بركه بركه.
مين سماك لبنان؟
امه سمتني.
امي سمتني. مين سميني؟
ايه فاخر باسمه لبنان. انا بيسوي مرت لبنان بشوف حالي قد الدنيا اني مرت لبنان انا كمان.
حلو كيف تجوزتوا؟ كيف عرفتوا على بعض وين؟ الاهل جوزوكم؟
انا لفيت عليها وحكيت معها وصار نصيب.
وخدنا بعض.
بتعطيها بوس يا مرتك؟ بوس يا مرتك.
بوسه هلا
بالنسبة للهوية اللبنانية، إذا عم تسألينا إذا الهوية اللبنانية تركيبة صارت عبر التاريخ تدخل فيها كمية عوارض خارجة عن لبنان.
كأنك فلبين. لا هي يابان.
يابان؟
ايه
راس اليابان.
ايه. انت وين من تركيا انت؟ انت الاصل من تركيا؟ ايه؟ من وين؟ اي منطقة بتركيا؟
ماما من وين؟ تركيا.
هي عم تقول انت تركيا؟ انت تركيا؟ لا
عمي جيشنا. برافو عليك برافو.
أنا وأصحابنا يعني جروبات كنا نروح على الحمرة أكتر شيء، نقعد على الطرقات على الأرض على الرصيف وهيدا، ونقعد نرسم العالم، نرسم كافيات. كنا كتير عن جد كنا كتير فايتين بالجو، كان كتير حلو. بحس حالي فيها هيدي الكاركتر شوي. هلا خلص ما بقى تحس انه انا فنانه وانا بدي اكدح وبدي اعمله. The Eternal Guest يعني شوفي منهم هدول اللي بتكوني قاعده وفجاه بدقوا الباب وبفوتوا وبيلبسوا، بتكون انت عندك 100 ظهره و100 مشروع و100 هيدا. صار شيء عاد ما بقى ينحكى فيهم يعني البلاستيك سيرجري.
The Lebanese have had their diaspora. So, you know, there are more Lebanese outside Lebanon than in Lebanon. And many of them are still coming back to the country and leaving the country. And there's always this transition of people coming and going all the time to this country. Arabic mixed with French and English is a very important part of the Lebanese identity. We're trying to discover our identity, we're trying to fight it through, we're trying to resolve issues around it. Are we Arabs, are we Europeans, are we Mediterranean? If you do a building as an architect, you wouldn't necessarily know to which identity it belongs. But the surrounding of the building creates the identity for the building itself.
I have had an issue with my Lebanese identity. I didn't know what it meant to be Lebanese. I was from London and then 10 years in LA. I was a California girl who had this slight English accent, who apparently was from the Bukra Valley. I didn't understand the society. I do understand it very well now, appreciate it and love it. I didn't understand it at the time. I didn't understand what it meant to be from a specific area or to be from another area. I didn't know what it meant to be Muslim or to be Christian. I didn't understand why people judged you according to where you came from. In 2006, it had been like 5 years that I lived here when the war broke out. That's the first time I felt I was Lebanese, because And then I kind of understood the society, because war hit you. I'm sitting in my house and a bridge is blown and I'm thrown from bed, and then there's war, and then we have a company of 100 dancers. 50 of those are foreigners. We have to get them out. It's this panic. And then you realize, I don't want to leave this country.
Identity. Is there a Lebanese identity? Of course, there are common denominators. So yeah, we must have an identity that was influenced by the common experiences we've lived. Probably the war, that feeling of insecurity, that feeling of wanting to live the maximum, not knowing what's going to happen the second day, that feeling of detachment, maybe. Lies are common denominator. We always see that the negative is outside of us and we don't look at ourselves. We love to say that we don't belong, but we are, and we're better, we're the exception. All Lebanese people feel they're always an exception. Their story only happens to them. Their problem only happens to them. Like no one has ever lived my experience. I'm a special case.
شوي لورا. Okay. The shot is هيك. Okay. Okay, ready? Rolling.
Like for me, I don't believe in identity. I don't think these things are real. Sexual identities are socially constructed. Gender identity is a fiction. Your race doesn't mean anything. Your national identity doesn't mean anything. These things, like if anything, they suggest a political affiliation, at which point I think people should be free to do whatever they want with that. I think when you speak about these things, you're sort of addressing a kind of social entry point. Like when you say, I'm an Arab, it's something social, it has a social function or a political function. Otherwise, there's nothing true about it. I can't allow myself the assumption that if I were to fall back on an identity, it would justify any of my behavior. When I say I'm Lebanese, all that means is that I grew up in Lebanon. This is the passport I have, and this is a sort of the political institution that I operate under. But it doesn't necessarily mean I approve of it, doesn't mean I should approve of it.
الأميرة الأولى الأميرة فلوري تتفضل. أهلا وسهلا. أنت أتزوج معي؟ ما بدي أتزوج معك، عم تحط زهور حتخليني أعطس. الأميرة نيدو شربات. هيدي الأميرة منيحة. دم 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 كله بيج مقياس انه دينه احلى لون.
There's a line in one of the songs where we go كله بيج مقياس انه دينه احلى لون, which means everyone is adamant with excessive conviction that their religious affiliations are the greatest color. People go into their political parties because of their religious affiliations a lot more often than they do it because of any political convictions. And the political system in Lebanon allows for your religious affiliation to actually be a political conviction, which is really funny. And every party has a color. So it was that everyone becomes adamant that their religion is the greatest color.
اللبناني ما بيفكر انه طائفته احسن طائفة وجماعته احسن جماعة، بس اللبناني بيفكر انه جماعته بتحميه. بدها وقت ليرجع اللبناني يغلب العناصر الاجتماعية اللي بتجمع ببعضه، وإنه بدها وقت ليحس اللبناني إنه جماعته ما بتعطيه شيء.
في النظام السياسي من الحرب ستبقى مشروع مستمر حتى ولو كان.
There is no consensus over history. There is no political consensus. But at the end of the day, that might be very interesting because that is very complex. It keeps you awake.
ما كنا نتعاطى السياسي والحرب. كان الحرب تبعنا هو اللون، بتعرفي كيف تخلقي لوحة.
You can criticize like you do. I'm good to say you can criticize like you do. It's always so thrown around despite the likes of you. Let's throw it around despite the likes of you.
It takes a really strong person to go against what your family has taught you. So a lot of the hate was passed on. I mean, I got that when I was growing up, where like my ID says that I'm a Sunni just because my parents are, and I don't believe in these things. And someone else who, in theory, would also not believe in their parents' confession, but they judge me anyway because I'm from this sect or whatever. The sectarian system is something that in official documentation was only supposed to last for 3-4 years. It was supposed to be a temporary solution until they created something better. And then I'm guessing people got power hungry.
I don't look at them as political divisions. I think they're tribal, they have to do with communities that accept certain rules whereby there is a certain coloration to a group and another coloration to the other. And I'm not talking about skin color, I'm talking about one guy claims he's orange, the other guy claims he's yellow, the other guy is pistachio green, and some other guy is blue or whatever. They become like soccer teams. A soccer player runs behind the ball, shoots the ball. There is a certain level of strategy of exchanging the ball across the territory, but at the end of the game, you never question why you're running and why you've got to put that ball in the goal. So you just run. You realize that even some of these groups are very incoherent in their, politically, for instance. Their relationship with modernity, for instance, is very incoherent. They take certain stances against modernity in the West in general, but then they wear Nike shoes. They're hooked on the internet. They probably have a Facebook page.
I don't believe in the two separate sects of Islam, the separate sects of Christianity, this and that, because at the end we're all created the same way. We all come in the same manner and we all depart in the same manner. And here we are killing one another because of a specific difference. I think religion is a tradition. It's a guided book that helps people who need to follow. Hence, by following a specific type, it's going to make you dislike another type because they're following it in a different manner. I come from a home, my mother's Christian Maronite, my father's Muslim. Religion does not exist in our house.
حلو انه لبنان فيه تنوع، بس هيدا التنوع مستغل لغاية تانية. يعني بستغرب انا ليش كيف بعدنا لهلا بنحكي انه التعايش. شو اي تعايش؟ ما نحن صرنا الاف سنين عايشين مع بعض، ليش هلا عم نحكي بالتعايش؟ كل عمرنا نحن انه اللبنانية يتجوزوا من بعض، ولا مرة كان هيدا مشكلة. هلا صارت مشكلة، صار انه جوزت شيعي؟ يا لطيف، انا سنية وجوزي شيعي. انه ما بفهم كيف حتى امرار العقل انه يعني we shouldn't even be talking about it. We make a lot of fun of our different sects بس انه just for fun. Sometimes it gets a little bit edgy بس انه عن جد بيكون مزح مش اكتر. يعني بس انه شو هو اللهجة، انه انا من بيروت وجوزي من الجنوب، ف بس سياسة وايد ولا مرة.
Key, right? Yeah. When do you think I'll be going to get my Oscar?
Every person can mix with every other person in order to give another context, and it's just these intermingling that create the richness of life. You know, the more you separate, the more you divide, the more you are one color, the more you're consumed by only that part of society, and you cannot know more. You cannot envisage to get beyond a certain state of mind, and you lose lots of enrichment, you lose lots of potentials, you lose lots of... Anyway, mixing is much better. You should see the colors of the elephant. I mix them in a way that nobody can go and say, I am of that color or that color. They're so intermingled that they're obliged to be of all colors. And that's how we should be. We should have all of those colors potentially accepted within us.
أهلا فيك. اكتبي اسم الذهب. الحرب أخذتكم على اليمين.
البكرة شو معناتها لك؟ شو بيعني لك البكرة لو لوندمان؟
بيهمني الفعل. إذا واحد بيفعل بحترمه.
إلا لو كنت يا حلوة.
لو كنت يا حلوة إلي ضياع وغني لكب هالألماظ عجريكي اثنين. بس شاعر بعزق فصول السنة بيهزهزك بشعر تركع له الدني وبيعلقها مرجوحتك بالنجمتين. الحياة حلوة والإنسان لازم يكرمها للحياة ويكون بطل فيها.
بكرة بنشوف يعني الوقت بيمشي الأمور، يعني عم نحط كل شيء على ظهر الوقت، كثير تعودنا عليه كل يوم بيوم. نحن بلبنان صرنا 30 سنة هيك كل يوم بيوم.
ما بعرف انه معودين عليها، بكره بنشوف شو بصير، يعني مثل ما الله بيريد. الحمد لله. When we were kids it was very annoying because انه بابا جيب لي كذا، بكره بنشوف. اذا yes or no شو بكره بنشوف؟ shall I wait لبكره لحتى اشوف real seriously عن جد لبكره لاشوف ولا عم تقدفني؟
There's another phrase which says 99% خلص راح أعملها, which means 99% I promise you 99% this will happen tomorrow, whatever. And then you think in your mind, you say, this is very Lebanese. What happened to this 1%? This can change everything. When they say 99% it will happen, it means he's not coming. It will not happen because there's this 1% which has all its reason with it. So there are expressions in Lebanon which allows for an open pocket where so many things can happen in this tiny extra thing that's done. And I think Minshouf Bukra, tomorrow we see what happens, is very true. I mean, you can't plan for so long in Lebanon. You can plan if you want, but as I said, on the way you might divert and bifurcate and change and things, and your plan might become even better, not necessarily to the worse, you know, so by changing it can improve. The uncertainty that we go through really affects us, of course, but that's why there are many projects that I do that are irrelevant of clients. These are the sculptures. Even the cloud project doesn't have a client.
I battle with the uncertainty of tomorrow. There are days where I think maybe we're all not bipolar, but divided. There are days where I wake up and I feel that I'm larger than life, and whatever I'm feeling this moment is just fantastic, and I do not worry about tomorrow. And there are days where I wake up with this fear of what might happen. Those are the days when I probably feel weak or tired or emotional. People sometimes, unfortunately, live not knowing what to expect. Even here, I have a dance school with 1,000 students. Sometimes when the political situation goes really bad, they'll call, is there a class tomorrow? And we will say, call us tomorrow and we'll let you know, because we don't know.
I guess at some point you give up on those ideas of being able to plan everything. Life happens, things just crawl up on you and your plans fall apart and you can't control it and you fall in love and you get your heart broken. I don't know, there's just more in life.
من أنا وصغيرة عندي شغلة براسي إنه عن جد ما بدي أمرق بهالحياة مرور الكرام. يعني ماني لا شوبان ولا ماتيس ولا هيدا، أنا مجرد إلستريتر، بس بعرف أنا إنه هالناس هول اللي عملوا شي وماتوا بعدوا شغلهم. يعني لما واحد بيشتغل وبتتركي نقطة بالهيدا بتضل إنه حلوة.
لكن بتضل الكتابة تحلم طالما في كتابة بالحياة، طالما في فن، طالما في تعبير. الإنسان بضل تطلعاته للأبد.
If you want to look ahead, I feel that we should come back to our own senses, which we're losing in the digital world. We can do full projects and finish the project without going and visiting them. I don't think there is quality that will come if you do not move, feel with your five senses what's happening and experience the world, you know. You can't experience the world only through books, nor only through the screen of the computer, nor only through those things. You have to just get up and move and go and see it. If I send you 20 photos of this place, say, wow, fantastic, but you'll never know what it is until when you sit on it, hear what's happening in the village, smell whatever is around, if there is roses, fragrances or whatever, smell what is being done in the kitchen, touch the sofas and walk on the ground of it.
When you're saying that tomorrow we'll see, it is in that moment where you have that hope and you have that disconnection and you have that dream and you have that opening. So it is about a moment. It is not about tomorrow. It is about that vision at the moment. Tomorrow I'll see what? Tomorrow we'll see.
الورد جميل جميل الورد الورد جميل جميل الورد الورد جميل وصوته طويل الورد جميل جميل الورد
اللي يسميني دوق الدبس بطحيني تذكر تذكرني يا أخي تنساني يا حبيبي يا نصيبي كان بودي خليك قربي عارفك عقلي تتوج لقلبي واطبخ أكلاتك واشطف لك بيتك دلع ولادك أعمل ست بيتك بس انت ببيتك وانا شبيت لك والله يا ريتك ما بعمرك بليت